They have built the largest solar project in the world. So we are moving more in the direction of clean energy. For the first time ever, our integrated resource plan, looking out for the next 20 years, did not identify as the least cost, least risk, a fossil fuel plant. We will be adding about 2,700 megawatts of wind, about 1,860 megawatts of solar, about 1,877 megawatts of energy efficiency, and another 268 megawatts of direct load control. We plan to fill.
Sorry, when you say we, you mean Pacific Corp, not Rocky Mountain Power.
Yeah.
Does everybody know the difference? It's sitting.
Pacific Corp is the
Washington,
parent
Oregon.
company, and we are just the operating. Yeah, Rocky Mountain Power is Utah, Wyoming, and southeastern Idaho. That will include an ambitious project that we are in the midst of now that we call Energy Vision 2020. We are adding 1,150 megawatts of new wind, and we are repowering over 900 megawatts of existing wind. We'll be putting in longer blades, different turbines, and then we're going to be able to get about 20% greater output out of that existing resource. So I commend you in looking towards the future. You're coming along with us. We are your partner. We want to work with you to help you attain your goals. As the mayor mentioned, Salt Lake City, Park City, and Summit County have all, within the last couple years, adopted similar resolutions to the one that you're looking at. We have been working diligently with them. It's important to understand we are a 6-state utility, and the costs of all of that generation and transmission is apportioned among those 6 states according to the proportionate use of capacity and energy. And you can't unwind that. That's the way it is. And as a regulated utility, we have the obligation to serve. So we have made significant investments in resources to serve our customers' needs. So as we go down this path together, what you'll be hearing from us is we're going to have to figure out a way that we help you attain your goals, and we also need to ensure that the resources that have been built for your benefit are paid for through their depreciated lives. I want to make sure people understand that we can adopt a resolution and say we're going to reach an average energy of 100% renewable by date certain. First of all, the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine all the time, so you need other resources, dispatchable resources, to firm and shape those intermittent resources. But we can't walk away from those investments and responsibility to pay for them. So it's a thornier issue than you might expect. Christine's got a lot of background in this, but I'm here to tell you tonight that we are looking forward to working with you. As we discussed yesterday, your municipal goal will be probably easily met with hopefully a grant from our Blue Sky Renewable Energy program and our subscriber solar program. When we go out on the market to buy these renewable energy credits, fortunately or unfortunately, the way you look at it, they're very inexpensive. So with the 45,000 customers who we have participating, we buy what's available, but we end up with surplus revenues. So what do we do with that? We turn that back to the community in grants for community-based projects. And your needs include this beautiful new city council, city hall. You've got your public works. You've got some lighting. your aggregate load doesn't reach the point where you would be eligible under our Schedule 34, where you would build or a developer would build a remote renewable energy project for you. We need to do it through a net metered project on your facilities, in combination perhaps with subscriber solar. And let me say too, energy efficiency is an important resource, and I would hope that as we're moving towards your long-term community-wide goal, that we can work even more closely together to try to get the community to adopt greater energy efficiency measures. The market itself is taking care of a lot of that with new code requirements. The cost of LED lighting has dropped significantly. We have a whole suite of incentives under our WattSmart programs where it's actually cheaper for us and for all of our customers for us to pay an incentive to customers to put in higher efficiency motors, higher efficiency HVAC, whatever, than it is for us to build or buy a resource to serve that in the future. Energy efficiency is the cleanest, cheapest energy that any of us can buy. So I don't want us to lose sight of that. Renewable energy is exciting, but energy efficiency is where we really want to work with you to focus efforts first, because if we're energy efficient, we will bring down the base that needs to be covered with renewable resources.
Go ahead.
Is there, like, when you're talking about a renewable energy source, what are those in a nutshell? You said the wind, you said solar.
Wind,
the wind is low, the sun doesn't always show. Is hydro? You didn't mention hydro.
We won't be developed. There's not going to be any new hydro.
Well, I'm just asking the type. I mean the type. Is that considered renewable?
You know, some do and some don't. And if you take a look at this chart that I handed out to you, we do break hydroelectric out separately. We don't have the big dams here. Well, we have Glen Canyon and Flaming Gorge, but they're not Rocky Mountain Power Resources. But in the Northwest, where our sister utility is, they take advantage of some hydro output from Bonneville Power Administration, but the company itself has built some big projects. And because of the impacts to fish, some people aren't real keen on hydroelectric, so we're not.
Well, what my ultimate, I guess, real question is amongst the renewable energy in that basket, even possible now or in the near future, I don't think that it is now, at least nothing, to have a state / the entire grid be on renewable energy because of what you said, that the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. You have to meet the demand with the, is that even possible, or is there a way in?
Well, you know what? The day will come, I'm sure. I'll be pushing daisies, but the day will come when battery storage may help shape that load.
Which is kind of what I'm asking. Like, right now, it doesn't seem like that's even remotely possible. I hope that somehow they figure a way to store all that energy that would really make everybody's life a whole lot easier.
And you know, the reason we're asked frequently why we don't develop wind in big wind projects in Utah, and Christine can answer this. The wind blows a lot more in Wyoming than it does in Utah. In fact, on
Texas.
On the American Wind Energy website, they break out by state what the relative output would be if you could capture all of the wind resource in the respective states. And if you do the math on it, I think Utah's wind resource is like 13% of what Wyoming's is, or something like that. So we don't build big wind here, but Utah is a good state for solar. But it is intermittent, and
probably not as good as Nevada.
The other thing is you get your peak solar output many hours ahead of the heat, the 100%. We're able to take advantage of solar energy that's coming from the west, from California, because it's ahead of their curve too. And in some cases, literally, they're paying us to take it. It's at negative cost. We have been able to ramp down our coal resources in order to take advantage of the solar energy that's coming more towards midday. In fact, our company won a national award for our ability to ramp those coal resources to a very low level to take advantage of that solar.
So if I understood correct, for us to do city operations at 100% renewable, it's a matter of just purchasing these, what were they called?
Well, we'll look at doing some solar panels at City Hall. Maybe at the.
But I mean, in a very simplistic way, if we just bought enough of them, they would be considered good.
I don't know what you can support.
But I mean, even if we didn't do that, I mean, does that, in theory at least, is that what it means?
This is what it means. We're going to take a look at what your annual consumption is,
Right.
and we will ensure that there are renewable resources whose output at the end of the year equals what your consumption was.
And right now, those are still
We're not
cheap.
talking about following load.
No, and that's not what I'm at, but I'm just saying, to get to that thing, it's not a matter of us self-producing and storing everything ourselves. I get, and right now you're saying buying those credits is
It might be
expensive.
a matter of us self-producing.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Maybe
That probably
entirely.
is better.
Maybe entirely.
Salt Lake City, when we announced our subscriber solar program, it's been almost 3 years ago, they stepped forward and took 15% of it. It's a 20 megawatt project, and they stepped up to 3 megawatts of that. And
That the city itself purchased.
for their municipal operations, correct, yeah. And as I said, today it is fully subscribed with a waiting list. I'm hopeful that we're going to be looking at building a second tranche of that.
There may be a couple more questions. I was looking at the clock, but let's give Lindsay a chance, because if you notice on the handout from Aileen that as far as coal assumption, just in the next 10 years, we're dropping substantially, so maybe it's part of that discussion.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I have a few handouts I'll pass around as well, just 2 there you can take a look at. My name's Lindsay Beebe, and I'm an organizing representative with the Sierra Club here in Utah. And for the past 4 years, I've been working on our Beyond Coal campaign, which works to transition Utah to a clean energy state, away from a fossil fuel heavy state, to explore, enjoy, and protect the planet. Today I'm here actually to talk to you less about the co-benefits of switching to renewable energy, such as air quality and reductions in carbon emissions, and more to talk to you about some hard facts and figures about coal economics as compared to current renewable resources. I'd like to second what Aileen was saying in terms of the partnership that they've built with Park City, Moab, and Summit County is really commendable. And moving forward in transitioning to 100% clean energy is a really admirable goal. I'd love to encourage the city to continue that trajectory. So, first of all, what you have in front of you, if you take a look at this sheet here. This is a fact sheet that details the findings of a report that we commissioned it was released in June of 2018, this past summer. This report uses publicly available data to look at the economics of Pacific Cor's coal fleet as compared to current prices for transitions on the open market, as well as new wind and new solar builds. What we did is the Sierra Club has been, since 2008, a regular intervener in Rocky Mountain Power's IRP processes, Integrated Resource Plan at the Public Service Commission, all here in Utah, as well as in the other states where they do business, most notably Washington and Oregon. And through those processes, we've been asking to have a full accounting of Rocky Mountain Power's economics as relates to their coal units. And this is something that actually the commission in Oregon ruled had to be a study that had to be done internally by Rocky Mountain Power, which they did this past year as a recommendation from the Oregon Commission from their 2016 IRP. That study, which we were hopeful to look at, was actually deemed confidential, and so we weren't able to actually verify the numbers that Rocky Mountain Power and the calculations that they did on their behalf. So what we had to do is we went to Energy Strategies, which is a Salt Lake City-based third-party energy consultant firm. They do work with Rocky Mountain Power, they do work with the state, large energy consumers as well. And we commissioned them to take a look at Rocky Mountain Power's coal fleet. On the map there, you'll see that there are a number of assets that Rocky Mountain Power owns, either in part or in whole, across the West. And this constitutes the largest coal fleet in the western United States. And so what we have here is some of these plants are as old as 35 years, 40 years old. It is an aging coal plant. Some of the results that came back in the report, and I have a couple full copies here if anyone really wants to nerd out and dive in, but I'll leave that for you. What we found out is that these coal plants have been increasing in cost year over year because of the improvements that they require, from year to year. And so since 2009, the coal plants have increased in cost by 50%. What we've also seen is rapidly decreasing renewable energy costs. And if you flip to the back of this sheet here, you'll look at these charts. What this does is it compares each of Rocky Mountain Power's 22 coal units, They have multiple coal units at an individual plant. So each of their 22 units compared to the current price of solar versus the current price of wind. And this is new solar build and new wind build. And these numbers are very conservative numbers that we took from the Energy Information Association. And actually many of the projects that we've seen across the West have come in at much lower cost than the numbers that we've used to compare here. So what you see is that 12 coal units across the board here run at a higher cost compared to solar energy, and 20 of the 22 units run at a higher cost as compared to new wind. And that's pretty substantial. It's indicative of what Eileen just mentioned in terms of their IRP determines that the least cost resources is no longer fossil fuels. And this is another piece of proof that demonstrates that. So this is a report we like to use in terms to just provide us background. But what we've seen in the company as well, and across the West really, and if you look at this yellow piece, is really a story of, I took a clip that was in the newspaper just yesterday, and this is from the Gillette News Record in Wyoming, which is certainly coal country. And here, even in Wyoming, they are starting to tell the narrative that renewables are now cheaper than coal. And it's a reality that we have to come to and understand how to transition in the right way, justly, taking care of workers and communities that rely on these areas, transition towards the cheaper renewable energy sources. We've seen that from the newspaper. We've also seen it from Rocky Mountain Power's own president, Gary Hogeveen, as he testified to the Wyoming Corporation's Elections and Political Subdivisions Committee, when he said, if you open up a coal plant to an unregulated market, they would be very much at risk, and mostly because of economics. Let's be honest with you, and that's in that quote there. So these are just examples of the narrative of cheap fossil fuels is no longer valid, and we're moving into a different era. The renewables we're seeing now are no longer your grandmother's renewables. These are technologies that are advancing at a pretty expansive clip. If you look at this, I want to speak to something you were talking about with storage. This blue chart on the back here. What this is an example of is it takes the coal cost as provided in the Energy Strategies report from the publicly available data, and it matches it up to numbers that are directly from Rocky Mountain Power's IRP. And you can see there are new IRP numbers for their 2019 IRP, which actually include battery storage. And so if you see the orange and the kind of teal colored lines, those are Utah Solar photovoltaics with storage. And you can see it still comes in lower than a few of the coal plants here. It looks like Jim Bridger and Hayden. And then if you look at wind versus along with battery storage, you'll see that it comes in much lower than the majority of the coal fleet here. And so this is just to prove to the city that transitioning to renewables, even including the added cost of storage on site to help ease that load, ease that transition from peak production to peak demand, it's not going to cost more, and in fact these cost curves for renewables are continuing to move downward to the point where, you know, the dates that you've set in the current resolution language, we're going to be dealing with a renewable market that is very, very favorable for the city.
When you say the city, are you talking about the city operations or every single customer and industry or business?
Well,
in the
I'm
city?
looking at it through a lens of Cottonwood Heights, but certainly every customer in Utah will benefit from a transition to clean energy. And that's our official position with the Sierra Club, of course.
Well,
Yeah.
if it's okay, because of time, you know, again, we've had a draft resolution we've looked at. I mean, one of our big questions is the fiscal impact on a city because of our responsible constituents. But what I appreciate is the opportunity maybe to continue this discussion in more detail, and allow some more questions, of course, as to that impact and to the timing, because we put in our draft resolution some dates. Are those realistic or are they unrealistic? We put some caveats in there as far as principles of affordability, reliability, and those things. Is that appropriate? Is there other language? I don't know from the council perspective, we want to continue this in the next work session or have staff with representative from the council sit down with Aileen and look at that language so that we can proceed. Because conceptually, at least for me, conceptually, we're excited to move this direction. We just want to do it correctly. We want to look at some facts and basis behind, so when the average constituent calls, we can say, yeah, here's how it benefits us in the long run.
Well, your goals for your municipal operations are similar to what the other three communities have adopted, and as I said, the extent of your municipal operations is
Ours is very limited,
small
so
enough.
it should be easy.
Yeah, that is certainly realistic. And as I said, I think Lindsay and I are saying the same thing. The cost of renewables is dropping. The investment tax credit on wind is certainly attractive to us. That is going to gradually be phasing out. Or I guess it's production tax credit on wind, it's investment tax credit on solar. But we recognize the declining cost of renewables. As I said earlier, you can't walk away from the embedded costs, and those will still need to be borne by communities who were moving in this direction until they reach their depreciated life. Now, today in a 2-hour meeting, we were talking about some different ways of getting there, and you will certainly become part of those conversations. But I think that's something that's very important for you to understand.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Can I just ask one question? Of your 6 state utilities, are 2 of them, Washington and Oregon, looking to get out of all of their ownership or their connection to coal?
In fact, Oregon adopted a statute a couple of years ago, and I believe that by 2029, that they will have paid off their proportion of our coal fleet. They began paying an incremental adder to their bills in 2009 on that. So they've already, for almost a decade, they have been paying more to accelerate depreciation on their proportionate share of those resources.
And in fact, it'll be Oregon, Washington, and California through the multi-state process that's ongoing that will be exiting the coal market for PacifiCorp.
We should probably make these credits a lot more expensive. Further along, more people get, would probably make those.
Well, in fact,
Or if the technology doesn't keep up with them.
the credits
You hope it does.
that I referred to pertain really only to our Blue Sky Renewable Energy Program, where for $1.95 per 100 kilowatt hour block, you can voluntarily subscribe on your bill. The credits that I'm talking about are not part of the conversation about the resources that would be acquired to meet either your municipal goal or your larger community-wide goal.
Okay, Scott, further question?
Yeah, I do have one probably germane to a discussion later, because this question had to do with ours. In the big scheme of things, statewide, do you have any idea how your emissions from all sources compare with that of automobiles? Are you guys like, are you like equal?
I
or
don't
you-
have it.
Do we have any idea?
I don't. It's not my piece of business.
No one's.
I'm sure we have it.
I don't have Rocky Mountain Power specific numbers, but we know
Even overall?
on average overall that typically energy production constitutes about 33% of all emissions.
Okay.
And similar with transportation. We know that in this
So they're about
valley.
equal in this valley, they're probably.
In this valley, because of our inversion issue,
It
it's
changes in the
about
winter.
50% of our emissions are from transportation.
Yeah, about 57%.
Because honestly, that was one of the questions when I reread our thing. I was like, I thought this was sustainability generally, but it's really kind of really only focused on energy. It's not cars and stuff. And so that's kind of what I want to, we spend a lot of time dealing with this. It's kind of nice to know where it is in the big picture.
There's a lot of pieces to solving that sustainability puzzle.
Yeah. My understanding when you said cold, as you get more information, you adjust. And that's why I'm so supportive, because every year we're getting new data, new information, and we're tweaking and adjusting moving forward. But
Well, something else I'd like the council to know that we discussed yesterday is that Rocky Mountain Power is really leading out on developing infrastructure for electric vehicle chargers.
oh yeah.
And I understand that you're interested in doing some of that, and we have an incentive program. And I'll be working with Tim and Matt, and we'll work together to put together a plan. But we do have some very generous incentives to help you do that.
Well, and I would just a quick statement. I mean, I'm one of the people who's been here from the beginning. One of the very first things we did when we incorporated the city was turn all of our semaphores over to LEDs. Once we finally got a deal worked out with Rocky Mountain to put as many streetlights as we possibly could to LED, we've done that. We've designed and built this building to those standards. Using sustainable practices and doing things as best we can to keep that usage and stuff down is not it's certainly not new this week or
No.
this year. It's been going on since day one.
Yeah, and those are the important measures where you create structural energy efficiency. You're not relying like it was when I was a kid. My mother would fine me 5 cents for every light that I left on, It's like on.
And with inflation, that's a lot.
Right, when I had 50 cent a week allowance, that'd be probably really quick.
My questions?
Well, I think you highlighted that through one of your examples helped too. One of my concerns is the economics, and you talked about if you were to start today and build all of your plants today, it would be a no-brainer what plants you'd build, but you're going to have to pay for the ongoing life of those plants you built in the past. And the Oregon example is a pretty good example where they paid essentially an accelerated depreciation fee in addition to their normal power bill.
Right.
To retire those assets. And that to me is the big question, is where does that additional cost land?
And that creates some headroom to bring on resources. You're transitioning out of this resource and moving to another.
I guess I have just one thought. A long time ago, I was pushing for renewable portfolio standard here in the state of Utah in 2001. That segued into a renewable, sort of a softer goal guideline,
Yeah.
which we've achieved. I guess in my mind, as I think about the rest, have changed that as you move forward with your IRP and you run analyses on different 100%, 90%, whatever, that we can move and change. But really, I see this resolution as sort of a goal, something some of our community wants to see happen, and letting you know that that's what our community likes.
Right.
And so I think it's important that from my perspective, that's how I see it, and I just want you to know that that's how I personally see it. The other council members may see it differently.
Yeah.
But when you talked initially about like working together, that's how I see working together as we move forward.
Well, that was my interpretation. What I'd like to propose is that on our next work session, we bring this back to, we don't have time today, I think, and look at this language, see if there's any little tweak and agree on it, and put it on our following business meeting on December 18th. If we can come to an agreement on that language, I think we're pretty close, and this is very, very helpful, obviously. And of course, we will continue to work with you on a myriad of issues with Rocky Mountain Power.
Well, this is very much a collaborative effort, and we will welcome adding you to the table with other communities.
And we'd like to talk further too about the charging stations, et cetera. Okay, well, thank you to both of you.
Thank you for
Appreciate
having
it.
us.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was worried. I was like, oh my gosh, it's 7:15.
No.
Really burned a lot of time on this
I was thinking, I was trying to say 2 minutes. Sorry.
Just when you go home and all of a sudden it's an hour earlier, you're gonna be happy.
You're welcome to stay as long as you would like.
We
No.
should be leaving now, probably.
Okay, looking at the agenda, maybe we can move something around. We got some about 10 minutes. Maybe the track grant extension, maybe we could do that one. That one's pretty quick, and then we'll,
Just different than what was on our.
no, it's pretty similar, but give Matt an opportunity to.
Well, we've gone through that, that's what it is, it's
Okay.
just
Any-
the
any further-
resolution.
Any further comments on that?
No, sir, it's just the resolution you'll be voting on today,
Yeah.
just extending that money so that we can bid out in January and get better pricing.
Okay, no, item B and C will take probably more than 10 minutes, so actually, if there's no further questions on the track grant extension, I will move from that. Item D, storm drain reimbursement, is that?
That'll be pretty quick, Mayor, if you just wanted me
Okay,
to.
why don't you go ahead and do that one?
I mean, just briefly, we wanted to introduce this tonight to you to let you know this is coming forward. The south side of the school, that cul-de-sac that runs along the south side of the school, in the past,
Brighton High School.
Brighton High School,
Yeah.
sorry, my bad, I
Over
think the
hill,
school, I think,
down behind.
down over there. In the past, the baseball, where they're building the new baseball fields on the south end over there, used to be a private property, and we had sort of a handshake agreement, we could run our stormwater off of the road and into the private property because it was just a field and no one cared. Now they've built this multi-million-dollar baseball field, and our water is wreaking havoc on their work. So we need to go in and put in essence, a stormwater system. We are playing with two ideas. One is doing a storage pond on the school property with a maintenance agreement, and the other is we would have to add about three sumps in the road to collect our water.
Those gravel sumps?
Yeah, injection wells, class
Okay,
5
we're not-
injection wells.
We're not
No,
pumping out of the sumps yet.
down into the ground. Now, we met with the school yesterday or the day before yesterday, I can't
Yesterday.
remember. Today's only Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay, so we met with the
Wasn't
school.
Sunday.
Yeah, we met with the school yesterday, and we came to an agreement that we would put together an interlocal that basically states we can use their contractor, because they've just bid, to have them build the infrastructure for us, use their unit pricing, so we can get the numbers that they have just bid, and install our stormwater system. And then we would in turn reimburse the school so that we could bypass because they need it built quickly, is what I'm saying. So in other words, we are shooting
They're doing that
for,
work now.
they're out working now, yes. I mean, the field is Yeah, it's
How do you
taken.
control the pricing? Cost not to exceed, or?
We control the pricing. We have our estimate. We will submit, we'll present our plan. We have our cost estimate. They've agreed to their unit pricing, so we're kind of getting it off their unit prices that they have. They've installed sumps in the school property, so they have pricing at that type of work, and they also have dirt. It's obviously a big dirt work project, so they have unit pricing on that. And we'd like to so we'll control the pricing that way. We'll agree on a price in the interlocal, which we'll present to you as a council for your approval next business meeting, the 27th. Do we have one this month? Yeah. So we'll present that to you with more details of where we ended up. But right now, it's looking like we're going to build on the school property with an agreement that we can maintain a detention pond on that, a retention pond on that
Pond
property.
or a basin?
A pond. Well, when I say pond,
I'll be careful.
it's about that deep. It's about a foot deep, and it just spreads out over
Yeah.
their property. It's not, yeah, it's engineering language, I apologize, but we'll build a depression in the ground to store our water, if that helps. And we found that to be right now, that's our least cost and probably our best approach. So we're finalizing some things on that.
Is the next nearest inlet to a storm drain up on 23 Nantucket? That's right where it changes, right?
Yeah, it's up top. We can't, we'd have to pump it uphill to make it work.
Well, no, I'm just wondering where the current system,
Yeah,
I know there's stuff on Nantucket.
Right.
So, budget, generally speaking?
Estimation right now for the depression in the ground, about 28,000.
And
The other about 60. So we're really leaning towards the depression in the ground.
that would be a budget amendment?
Yeah, we would bring it back. I would propose we bring it back as a budget amendment when we open, I don't know when we're gonna open the budget again. That's a process you will go through
If you
when we
would,
do
if you
that.
would bring back that, as well as the cost of
Yeah.
the other two that we've talked about, those cul-de-sacs.
Okay.
So we have a clear understanding of how much, and how much is the budget amendment, how much is code changes, just so we can look at all
Okay,
of that.
we will do that. And like I said, we'll have Shane, I meet with Shane this week and we'll go over the interlocal, put it all together, get it cleaned up and hopefully get it taken care of in 2 weeks. Any questions on that? Okay, thank you.
The county's transportation choice fund priorities, is that applicant, or is that a,
We can start it.
I mean, or we can have a restroom break and take 10 minutes.
I can give you a quick recap of what this is. We do have slides to show. but-
One second.
Yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, please.
Interruption. I'm not sure, but I suspect some of the folks that are here in the audience are here to listen to me. And if we're not gonna make it now and come back after, I'm not sure that's,
It's going to be more than 5 minutes, yeah.
is anybody here for the ADU discussion?
Okay,
I- 20 minutes.
well, we can spend 5 minutes if you'd
Sure.
like to talk about that.
Find out where we're at.
Yeah.
I do have a presentation on this as well. I don't know if we have access to Dan's computer to bring that up. Dan's read it. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Dan?
Let us run that first.
What I'll do is start with a summary. The memorandum went out last week on this item, and this has been an application, a zoning text amendment application since last fall. The first planning commission hearing was September of 2017. Since then, we've had 5 planning commission meetings, 5 city council discussions, and 1 joint planning commission city council discussion where we've taken feedback on this comment or on this proposal, and that history has kind of led us from an initial draft based on a lot of research we've done to doing more research, to refining the draft to a point where as staff we feel that we've addressed many of the concerns that can be addressed. And certainly there are concerns and opinions here that no ordinance addresses. But to provide a very quick recap, the summary of the ordinance, an accessory dwelling unit does not allow for short-term rentals. It does not allow for absentee owner renting out 2 homes or 2 portions of a property that person does not reside full-time in. And this is something we see in quite a few cities nearby, and Salt Lake City just brought theirs back up to the table and I believe approved it. I've heard from the Holiday Community Development Department that they're beginning to have that discussion with their council as well.
Yeah, we met with them at the conference in May overseas.
So, a very brief summary of where our current ordinance is, and there's obviously a whole history to this that we can get into if we need to, but what we're proposing right now is to allow accessory dwelling units as accessories, as an accessory use to the use of a property as a full-time residence. So much like a home occupation is an accessory commercial use, this would be an accessory use to rent out a small portion of your home. Allowed in the R1 and RR1 zones, so single-family zones, no accessory dwelling units in R2 zones where you already have two-family dwellings. The key here is owner occupancy is required, and we've established regulatory measures to try to ensure that we're verifying that as well as we can as part of the application process. Limiting one ADU, accessory dwelling unit per property, either attached or detached. They have different standards and they go through different processes that are laid out in the draft ordinance. Detached goes through a more stringent process because there's more of an impact potentially. All ADUs would require a license, permit, a building permit, and a walkthrough inspection, even if no additional work is needed, just to make sure that we've walked through and seen the site and the property. Compliance with current applicable codes, so this is building codes, fire codes, health codes, ingress and egress, fire safety, that kind of thing is what we're looking at there.
So someone who gets a license will have a walkthrough and need to match current code.
Yes,
Okay, also, I think we need to say, this is not short-term rentals.
absolutely. Not short-term rentals. We have an ordinance that regulates them very strictly, and we're not proposing any changes to that. A good landlord certification is required. This is generally a couple-hour class, just providing some
Can
basic.
they do that online?
You can do it online, I believe, and there are some physical locations you can sign up for classes and go take. That certification will be required before a license is issued. And then, hand in hand with owner occupancy, ADU licenses would terminate with any change in property ownership.
So if the house is sold or some ownership changes or someone else gets added to the
A new
deed,
application would
they
need to be
do a new
submitted.
application.
Yep.
Okay, just to plant a seed, I know time is short, maybe this is up here now.
Yeah.
The parking, the fencing, okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
so these are the primary differences between attached ADUs and detached. I'll start with attached because this is what we would anticipate being most common. No separate utility meters, no separate entrances in the front yard, so you can't build another front door on the front of the building in an effort to preserve the neighborhood character. 2 additional off-street parking spaces would be required beyond what's required for the home itself, so a minimum of 4. And
Can
this,
you like visually describe that for me?
well, this
So I can see it.
this could be a 2-car garage with a driveway.
So 2-car garage with the driveway behind it, so you could have 2 in the garage and 2
Correct.
behind it.
This and the next portion after the semicolon here, no new parking stalls are allowed to be constructed in the front yard. So if you need to construct additional stalls, they would have to be on
You
the
only
side
have 3.
yard. So what we want to avoid here is paving the entire front yard of a home to begin to look like a parking lot. That's what we want to avoid. So a 2-car garage with a driveway behind it, a 1-car garage with some concrete off to the side of the house would work.
That's existing.
Existing, or if you're constructing new parking, you just can't construct additional parking in the front yard.
So it'd have to
You have
be
to construct
from
it
the
around
front
the
of the
side
house
or the
back.
rear. And
Probably most likely to the side of the house.
correct.
Or it could be side in front.
Right, yeah, that's,
Front, where the concrete exists already.
Right.
If you need to build new parking, it has to be on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
it has
here are
to
your
be-
2 cars, you could just add a little piece over here.
You'd have to add a route so you can park over to the side of the house, off to the side.
Next to the garage.
Yeah,
Like
Or
an
front.
RV.
Can you draw a picture?
I can. I'm gonna draw a picture for you.
I think there probably are people in this audience.
What we see a lot is a carport overhanging off attached to the side of a home, and then a car or an RV or a boat or something parked underneath. That's our intention
But if
here.
you had a driveway straight in,
Mhm.
directly to the side of the front yard, you would have another pad, anywhere in front or to the side of the garage.
Just to the side. That's the way
Yeah.
this reads right now.
Yeah.
You could not put it, according to this, you could not put it,
In front of the house.
In front of the house.
you couldn't create something that came off the driveway.
Right, like a circular going.
What we want to avoid here is
How'd you get there?
expanding the concrete across the front yard, the front of the house, so all you have in your front yard is cars parked. And again, if an application couldn't meet that criteria, then they wouldn't be entitled to get that license.
But if there was an existing residence that already had a circular driveway going through the front of their home, and they want an ADU.
That's okay.
If they
We're just saying in our draft ordinance, no new
New.
constructed parking can be in the front yard. And then the fencing landscape buffer required next to ADU entrances and parking areas
Build the park, you build the
to-
driveway first.
to provide
Apply it.
a visual obstruction to the impact created. Detached ADUs, all of those rules will still apply. There are a few additional. When you're creating a separate structure, your setbacks are going to be greater. So what we're doing is mixing accessory setbacks with primary building setbacks. We're requiring that the height, the coverage, the size of the structure itself not exceed what's allowed as an accessory building, which is much smaller than a primary home, but that the setbacks of that structure meet the same setbacks as a home would need to meet. So what we're doing here is really saying you got to have a really big backyard to be able to fit these, and probably can't convert an existing garage into an accessory dwelling unit under these provisions. It's fairly restricted here. And that would go through a conditional use planning commission public hearing.
I mean, an
Quick
existing
question for
detached garage.
Generally, unless it meets all of those standards, but we don't have any, that's kind of mixing two standards right now.
Mike, for the audience, and again, as a reminder, this has already been through the planning commission,
Yes,
and their recommendation.
the planning commission recommended approval.
Okay.
And again, we had the joint city council planning commission meeting back on November 1st. This was in the Y2 Analytics citywide survey. We've taken a lot of comment on this.
And if you need me to have any conversations about how they worked in other communities, I came from a community that had this for 7 years.
When we come back, we'll want that.
Yeah, somebody would.
All right, we have to go
We have to
into
go to
that
this
second
meeting.
agenda, 6:30. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's why I was reading.
And we're gonna do that meeting in the council
Yeah, we're doing the
chambers.
council chambers.
We're gonna-
Hear me?